Hi, this is Stu and welcome to Stretching for Yoga series. And today we're going to talk about the psoas. You know, it's a very popular subject, and I thought I'd just show you a couple of things, how to find it, how we might decide that we actually need a bit of extra stretching for the psoas, and what to do if we decide that's the case. So, first of all, we've got to think about where the psoas is and what else is around that area. And of course, all muscles work in conjunction with other muscles, whether they're stabilizing or whether we're trying to open a particular line through the body. So nothing is, ever working in isolation. So that's the first thing to remember. It's going to be part of a continuum. But having said that, we often find little parts of that continuum that are more resistant to change for whatever reason. So first of all, we need to think about where it is, what else is there, and what the indications might be that we have a restriction in our psoas. Yeah? So the psoas lives in this part of the belly. It's attaching to the lumbar spine, and it's coming down through the front and attaching on the inside of the femur. There's a little point called the lesser trochanter of the femur, and it's attaching to there. When we say about attaching, nowadays, you can see that I'm backpedaling as I'm saying things because I'm trying to incorporate the understanding now of the fascia and the continuity. And so although we say about attaching, it's merging with the fascia that's surrounding the bone and could be then merging with other fascia from other muscles that are on this continuum. So although it seems like we're saying one pointed this to this, it's more of an idea of continuity, but a little bit of specificity in that particular area. So try and think along those sorts of lines. But that said, it's coming, definitely attaches or connects with the lumbar vertebra. So things that are happening to the spine will influence it. The diaphragm is just above it, and there's these arm-like projections from the diaphragm that are sort of coming down the lumbar vertebra. And the fascia from that is very likely to be connecting to the fascia from the psoas coming up. So quite often they talk about some influence between either restriction in the psoas influence the breathing or breathing influencing the psoas, because there's very much a connection between the two fascially. There's another little muscle that lives, this time inside of the pelvis, called the iliacus. And that also comes down and attaches to the lesser trochanter of the femur. Both of those muscles, again, there's different roles associated with different muscles. And of course, when we talk about them doing this, that, and the other, again, they're not working in isolation, and that will be only one of their tasks. But the psoas and the iliacus are deemed to be thought of as primarily hip flexors, as well as other things. Some people have even suggested they're part of the breathing apparatus because of the connection through to the diaphragm. So for our purposes, for the moment, we're going to think of them as something that might limit us getting enough extension in the hip because of the fact that one of their roles is hip flexion, yeah? So the opposite movement. So first of all, we need to think about why we may consider that we have some tightness in the psoas or some restriction in the psoas, and therefore we want to create some length. One thing you might notice is that when you're trying to do your back bends, you feel some tension and restriction across the fronts of the hips. Yeah, there may be an inclination to want to turn the feet out. Yeah, this quite often turning the feet out is either through over-engaging the glutes or through resistance in the psoas. And if we rotate the hips out, actually we're taking a little bit of pressure off the psoas. So those feet going out are an indication perhaps that we're trying to escape out the stretch of the psoas. So that might be an indication there in the practice. And in the deep lunges, we feel some restriction running across the front of the hip. In everyday life, we might find that if we lie on our belly, that we can become uncomfortable quite quickly, that we actually start getting a bit of low backache. Yeah? So that would be an indication maybe that the psoas is then pulling the lumbar vertebra forward, and then the back muscles are having to work extra hard to try and compensate that, and then we get this sort of aching coming on. The other thing that might happen is we might find that when we're standing up, that we notice that our knees are slightly flexed, always when we're standing. Our knees are slightly flexed because if we then follow up the line, the chances are that our hips are slightly flexed also, because there's some contracture on the front of the body. So the knees will be accommodating the flexion at the hip to try and balance us all the way up. So if we start looking at the way we're standing and noticing that we never really stand with straight legs, then it could be that we also have some restriction here. And of course, we can just feel discomfort. You know, if it gets to a certain stage, we may feel that, you know, it just feels really tender in here, or when I'm actually doing particular postures, I'm feeling really tender in here. So sometimes we have to take a step back and say, you know, why would that be the case? Why is my psoas, or both of them, sometimes it's just one side, particularly tight? What is it I'm doing in the rest of the day for this to have happened, yeah? So it's not the fact necessarily that, you know, okay, what can we do about it, but why is it happening in the first place? Because that is obviously something we also want to change. Might be that we're spending far too long sitting in a chair and we need to actually get up and walk around much more, okay? It could be part of a compensation for something else that's going on in the body. So we always want to sort of look at the big picture rather than just zero in on, okay, psoas, let's stretch it out. We want to think about its influences through the whole process and what else is being affected and why it would be happening in the first place. So let's say we've decided there's something going on with the psoas. I feel some restriction for whatever reason. Let's see if we can feel it and notice that there's a difference between one side and the other. So that's what we'll do next. So what you want to do is you want to lie yourself down on your back, and if you want a cushion under your head, make sure you're nice and comfy. Lie on something so it's not too uncomfortable. And where we want to go is we want to find this point of our pelvis just here, yeah? And we want to have our fingers, and we're going to use the flat of our hand, but also our fingertips. And so we're sort of coming in line with that part of my pelvis that is curving around the front here. And then, depending on how well nourished we are, we might have more or less to try and get through here. But basically we have to go down. We have to go down and through. So from there I'm going to take my fingers, and first of all, actually I want to bend my knee because I'm going to need to see if I'm actually on my psoas, okay? So this also provides a little bit more give in the abdominal area because it's not being held so tight across the front. So it allows me to dig down a little bit deeper. So here I am digging down to see if I can find the psoas. So I'm going down and I'm moving towards the center a little bit. And you should find some firmer tissue, yeah, shall we say. Now, that could be tender, yeah, because if the psoas has been overworking, sometimes it becomes, you know, a little agitated. But once we think we're on it, the way to find out is to then just lift the bent knee foot just slightly off the floor. And if I can feel the muscle pressing against my fingertips, then I know I'm actually on the psoas, yeah? We want to make sure that we're not engaging the rest of the abdominals here. It's just deeper down, okay? And so you want to find it, and then you want to just take your foot off the floor, make sure you're actually on it, and then notice whether it feels very firm to the touch or whether it's tender, and whether you notice any difference on the other side, okay? So this is where your psoas is. Don't be squeamish, just get your fingers in there and press, yeah? Okay, good. So once we have established that maybe we need to lengthen this area out, how are we going to go about it? Well, it needs to be something where we take our leg into extension, or we take our hip into extension, because that is going to actually put it across a stretch across the front of the body. And really, I'm only going to show you sort of, there's going to be lots of different stretches you can do for the psoas, or that will get in there, or that might incorporate more of that front line we're talking about. But we're going to focus on the lunge, yeah, because I think it allows some variety, and it also allows us to really sort of get in there quite effectively. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself some sort of cushion to put your knee on, because while we're getting into the psoas, we need to also protect our knee, yeah? So And then we're going to come into a deep lunge, yeah? And so you're going to be feeling it in the psoas of the leg that's going behind us, yeah? Now, what you need to do is you need to look at your foot, you need to look at your thigh, and make sure that you're not rolling it so that your foot is coming out or you're moving your leg. Because this is what we're talking about as far as escaping out of the psoas, because I'm taking this attachment area a little bit round, a little bit closer to the other attachment, so it makes it a little bit easier. So you want to make sure that the top of your foot is placing and pushing straight down into the floor, okay? Now, because the psoas attaches to the lumbar spine, if I am down here, yeah, I'm not going to be very effectively stretching my psoas because the lumbar spine is coming closer to my leg, yeah? What I need to be able to do is I need to be able to get up here, yeah? I need to be up, all right? And from there, what I need to also do is think about drawing my pelvis up, yeah? The front of my pelvis is up. Imagine I got hold of my pubic bone and pulled it in this direction, yeah? Because what we're trying to do is create some hip extension. Now, if I am quite mobile in the back, and I'm also can be quite tight in the psoas, what can happen is my pelvis could still be tilted forward, but actually I just take up the curve in the back, yeah? And sometimes it's quite hard for people that are actually very mobile in the back to actually isolate this part of the hip because of the fact that their body is used to just bending in the back, yeah? So you need to actually firm this a little bit. So I'm drawing up here, and now I'm sort of pressing my hips forward and trying to get the movement here rather than here, yeah? I can place my hands on my thigh if I want to provide support there, or I can place my hands on my bum and just encourage my hips forwards, yeah? So from this position, you'll have heard me, if you've watched some of the other videos, talk about PNF, or contract, relax, or post-isometric release. Well, very simplistically, they are very similar. And basically all we're doing is we're going to work the muscle before we actually then try and stretch it a little bit further. So in this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine that I'm drawing this knee forward to meet the other leg. So I'm not pushing down, I'm pulling forward. So what I'm trying to do is create some hip flexion in which the psoas will be assisting, or maybe the primary hip flexor in this particular position. So from there, I'm working, but only 20 to 30% effort. So I'm pulling my knee forwards, yeah, not ramming it into the floor because that's not going to be very nice, but I'm pulling it forwards and the floor is stopping me, yeah? So don't work too hard, and you're just going to stay there for 4 or 5 breaths. And then when you've done that, what you're going to do is on an exhale, you're just going to relax and sink a little bit deeper. And you should feel this stretch intensify across the front of the hip here. Just take another double check to the back leg, make sure that the whole front of the foot is placing nicely into the floor. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing again. So now I'm going to draw that back knee towards the front. Breathing nice and slowly. I'm keeping myself up, yeah? I may want to place my hands here. I can do a nice little chest opener at the same time. And then after my 5-6 breaths, I'm going to relax, sink one more time. Yes, and then repeat. So now I'm working. I'm drawing that back leg towards the front leg. Good. I'm just breathing nice and evenly. Good. And then relax, and one last little sink. Good. I'm just going to come up a little bit so as I can talk to you in a little bit more comfort. So, because of the fact that the psoas also attaches to the lumbar spine, a lot of people talk about the fact that you need to do some sort of side bend in addition to the extension at the hip in order to actually effectively get to all the different areas of the psoas. I think this is quite a good idea. I had to play around while we were waiting and found that this actually works quite nicely. If you set yourself up maybe 20 centimeters, I'm guessing because my metric is hopeless, so about that much, whatever that is in centimeters from the wall. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our deep lunge, And then we're going to take our inside arm and we're going to place it down the wall. And then our outside arm, which is the arm that's on the same side as the psoas that we're stretching, we're going to reach over and take it towards the wall. So now I'm incorporating a side bend as well as a hip extension. And that actually does feel quite effective. Good. And you can just hold that for however many breaths you want. Maybe start with 5 and then maybe 10, that sort of thing. With these sorts of ones that are adding a little bit of complication, I think just play with it first. See if it suits your body. Because it might be the fact that we're adding some spinal movement in too. You might not like it so much. It might be perfectly fine. But the thing is to always experiment. Just do a little bit to start with. Make sure your body likes it. And then do a little bit more. Okay? Obviously, you want to do this other side as well. You might find that you have one side that is particularly playing up where the other one isn't, in which case you want to do more on the side that is causing the restrictions. You just need to be a little bit careful if you're getting, pain from the psoas, yeah? If you're finding that you're getting in some of those sort of the Ardha Matsyendrasanas, these sorts of postures, when you're bringing this leg across the front line, that you're getting some discomfort in here, or that you're getting more of a sharpish feeling. If you're getting that sort of thing, then if the muscle is in spasm, then you don't really want to start stretching it out too strongly because of the fact that, you could aggravate it more. So you need to figure out ways of trying to relax it a little bit first before you then start stretching it. And it might be that you either choose to go and have some work done on it by a manual therapist who can actually get his fingers in there and try and release it a little bit for you, or you might find that you want to do that on yourself, in which case you can just sort of massage the psoas a little bit in that same sort of position that you put your fingers in. But the main thing is, and it goes for most of the muscles in the body really, is don't sort of hammer them too much, It's the same with the hamstrings. If you want to improve your hamstrings but they feel a bit sore, don't just do more and more and more because you want to actually try and lengthen your hamstrings out. Sometimes it's better just to ease back a little bit, and it might be the same for the psoas. If you can figure out why it's doing what it's doing, it might be that you're getting it to work too hard in some other postures that is causing the issue in the first place. So look at the whole picture, yeah? And just remember as well, everything is working together. So it's not the fact necessarily that, you necessarily might need to stretch the psoas out more. It might be perfectly fine. It's maybe some of the other things around it. So it's a little bit, you need to play a little bit of a detective game at the same time, but always go slowly and methodically as you're working to open up areas and just see how your body is integrating it, rather than just doing too much at one time and then think, oh Christ, what have I done to the front of my hip? Doesn't feel so good anymore. Good. Okay, so I hope that helped. A little bit of an insight into where the psoas is and the sorts of things it will restrict. And we'll meet you again soon for something else. Take care.